Hello, everyone. Welcome to One Liners, a weekly series centered around key influencers and players in the performance marketing space. My name is Joey Liner of Liner Connections, and I am your host. I took a week off for Thanksgiving, so I'm glad to kick off December with a really good industry OG, as we say, friend, Ross Shanken. Ross, introduce yourself, say hello.
All right, Ross Shanken, you already did a good job of that. It's funny. I've known you for so many years. It's funny to have you ask me to introduce myself, but I love the show. So for those who don't know, I've been spent most of my career at two different data and analytics companies. One was TargusInfo that a lot of people who are OGs might remember from back in the day, before we sold to Newstar, which eventually became part of TransUnion about a year ago, and they're in the TransUnion umbrella. And after selling TargusInfo, or right beforehand, actually, I started LeadID, which a lot of people may know in the space, and we eventually became called and known as Jornaya. So we were acquired in December of 2020, and by Verisk Analytics, and now that division is Verisk Marketing Solutions. Um,
Yeah.
and they're doing really well. But I left the company a little over a year ago, right around Labor Day of 2021.
So no pun intended. What a journey. Amazing, brother. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to, well, I miss you. I miss seeing you. I miss connecting
Me
with you.
too,
But I
man.
wanted to bring you on my show because I'm like, man, what the hell is Ross doing? Like, he's one of the architects and designers of game-changing environment within the performance marketing
Thank you.
space, in my opinion. So I wanted to catch up with you and say, outside of a couple LinkedIn posts, like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I left Verisk around, it was August, August 13th was my last day. It was a Friday, the 13th. And I happened to be with another mutual friend of ours, Rob Rokoff, who I
Oh yeah.
worked with. He was with me on the last day, and don't tell anybody of Verisk watching, but we were golfing. Oh no! And uh, and
It's
then
the way to
like
go
two
out.
o'clock, we actually, funny story. It was in this club outside of Philadelphia, and who walks in the lunch place after golfing? Charles Barkley. So I have a selfie of me, Rokoff, and Barkley, which was pretty cool. He was a nice guy. But 2 o'clock rolls around, and we had set up so many good procedures that when somebody leaves the company, 2 o'clock on their last day, cut off from email. So 2 o'clock on Friday, August 13th, 2021, all of a sudden my Gmail's like, can't connect. And I'm like, you bastards. So since then I ended up taking some true time off. I took a few weeks with my family in Hawaii, which was probably hard to get.
My
I have
favorite.
three kids, and two of them are already one's in college, one's out of college. So I thought it was a perfect time. If we could ever do it, now's the time. And we celebrated everything Jornaya and everything about their lives. We had graduations that we couldn't celebrate during COVID and stuff. So we just went to Hawaii for a couple of weeks and had a great trip. Came back Labor Day of 2021, and everyone's going back to school and life. And I'm like, I don't have email to go to. I'm like, what am I doing? And, um, you know, in the weeks leading up to that, probably the months leading up to that, I had some people in the industry call me, and, when they found out I was leaving, and they're like, well, what are you going to go do? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just keeping things open. But some people early on started talking to me about their business. And I'm like, yeah, I'll have a conversation with you. And a lot of them were raising money. And at that
Yeah.
time, it was still a very hot market to be raising money. And but like I had made a lot of mistakes raising money, and with a lot of key decisions in the business, as well as we did, and we had a phenomenal outcome for everybody all involved, including Verisk, which the juggernaut continues over there. um,
Yeah.
but a lot of mistakes that I learned the hard way, and then some I avoided with help, mentorship, advisors, and consultants, and people who really cared about the health and welfare of the business. um, and so I was helping out friends, people we know, that I
Yeah.
won't name names just because,
Yeah.
I don't know if they want me to, but, um, I did it at first just as a really informal thing. And I started to see a lot of commonality and kind of a lot of repeated issues that there aren't really best practices or sort of best methods or approaches to how to best approach these things like raising money, like how much to raise and should I raise or not, and how do I what's more important to be focused on than and what's less important, and how do I focus my team? We have so much opportunity and all the things that an early or startup business faces that you've faced for many years in different businesses
Yeah.
that we don't really have codified solutions to. So I was fascinated by number one, just trying to be there for people and help them out. And number two, starting to really write this stuff down and codify it. And so over the last year, I've been doing both. I've also been investing in some of these companies. So I
Yeah.
have probably a dozen angel investments or so that I've made, and about probably close to a dozen or so companies that I'm involved with in one way, shape, or form in terms of advisorship, consulting, being on their board. Um, and then on the side, I'm like writing this stuff down, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what that'll become, but it's all repeatable and teachable. So
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of
Could be
that
a
too.
class, could be a book, could be, who knows. Dude, I have a Charles Barkley story, but it's not as cool as yours. So I live in Scottsdale, and we went to the Krispy Kreme one night, just for late night donuts or whatever with the kids, and get to the drive through, and I come up, and the attendant's super happy, glowing, and he's like, hey man, here's a dozen. This is the car right in front of you was Charles Barkley. So I didn't get to meet him or see him like you, but
He bought you a
he was
dozen donuts.
yeah, so I got a free Krispy Kreme dozen donuts. I think he still has a house out here too, because he was on the Phoenix Suns and still out here.
Oh
But
yeah, I wish I'd known that back then. I would have like made him buy us something. I mean, what the heck?
but your story is so awesome because it's been hard for me to follow you, but now that all makes sense because you went through so much of that yourself, and like for you to take a minute. First of all, it's great to. I love Hawaii, so great that you got to go there. A great destination to hang out and take it all in. And then when you came back, you had time to process and think about like, hey, I'm not going to go rush into do anything next, but I'm just going to see, what's like share my experiences, share what I've been through, but do it in a way that is comforting and cool where you can talk to the people that you really care about and really help them go through this process themselves. So it's really, really cool. We're
It's
going to talk
fun,
about more
man.
about that.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's a must for me. If I feel like I have to be having an impact on people's businesses, or else it's like not worth either of our time. And it is funny. I think most people watching this podcast, if I can imagine,
Yeah.
could have a lot of opportunities where they could work and the jobs they could do. It's not like we suffer from lack of opportunity. I think we
Right.
suffer from too much opportunity and having trouble focusing and staying disciplined on the things that matter to us, whatever those are. And I'm starting to figure out what matters to me personally in my next phase. I don't know how that will play out. I could come back still and decide to fish in my own pond at some point because it's so fun, and I'd be that much better at it at this point. But everything's on the table. And one of the biggest challenges for me where I was going, and I think it's for all of us, is we have so much opportunity that we could pursue.
Yeah.
So it's I've found myself in the last year plus being disciplined and saying I'm not going to jump into any one thing on purpose because I know what it means when I jump in. You know what it means when you jump in. You're like
Yeah.
all in. And if you want to do that, do it. But if you're not sure, take your time because you
Yeah.
can. It's great.
That's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm glad
Yeah.
you're kind of coaching me right here. Is I've been doing that because when I left DMS, and I haven't really spoken much about that publicly, but I will. Nothing. I had a good exit with the team there, and still work with them today. But I didn't want to rush into anything immediately, go all in. And I've really enjoyed the last 6 months working with a lot of different companies within the space and being able to give a lot of guidance and advice, but just talking to so many different people and different initiatives and different programs and products. And it's a lot of fun, man. So I'm glad that we have that in common. And
Definitely. Definitely. We should have gotten
yeah,
together sooner. We got to chat. And there's a lot of people like us and even people
yeah,
with jobs who are really like us that they're trying to figure stuff out, and it's like it's okay. And
yeah.
we I think learn a lot from each other, and also sort of emotionally it's nice to have partners in crime.
It is. It's like modern, and especially from within what we went through with the pandemic and kind of coming out of it, seeing people switch jobs, the great resignation, whatever you want to call it, and just not rushing into something or not working where you're not, fully all in or happy. And so do things that give you the opportunity to learn and engage a lot, and find where you do eventually want to go. And if you do, if not, stick with what you're doing. And so uh, let's go back into the time machine for a minute,
Yeah.
dude, because I've known you for a long time. A lot of people have known you for a bit. I forgot, and I don't know if you ever told me this, but like, how the hell did you get into the space? Like, how'd you get into Targus? Who got you into the business? Like, I'm curious. I just want to
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. So it's probably a longer story, so I'll try to keep the high level, and you can poke on it if you want. But the what a lot of people don't know is Targus was not in the performance marketing space at the outset. For most of our history, most of TargusInfo's revenue did not come from the performance market space. We were known mostly in that space because we made a big splash, because we felt like that was the biggest and best marketing thing to do in that space. You
Yeah.
kind of have to stand out. Um, but like the majority of TargusInfo's revenue came from this really boring app called CNAME, which is like caller ID. So like
Yeah.
nobody knew that because nobody had to, and it was so interesting. But so the way I came to Targus was I was working as a sales guy at a company that outside of Philly that had this it was a small company, and I was always kind of entrepreneurial, and I wanted to help build a small company. Started in sales, but I became kind of a part of the growth engine. And we basically had this app that on an 800 number phone call, an inbound phone call, you could know the latitude, longitude of that phone number and route that caller to the right location, whatever it was,
Right.
Pizza Hut, Bally Fitness, Goodyear Tires, whatever. And that's what we were selling. And our method of doing it was based on like a 6-digit phone number instead of the full 10-digit phone number. And I
Right.
found this little tiny company called TargusInfo down in Northern Virginia that had the entire phone number map of all the country tied to addresses and precise physical locations. And I'm like, this would be an improvement to our product. So we kind of sold it as an enhancement through a partnership with Targus, got to know the
Ah,
guys. I wanted to leave my company and start my own company at like 27 years old.
right.
And I wanted TargusInfo to be my first client. So I was going to start like a consulting practice. It's bigger than, it was like different than that. But, and I went so I talked to George Moore, who was the founder and CEO. And this is back in 1997. Okay. So
Wow.
1997, I'm like, look, I'm thinking of leaving my company, and I'm thinking of starting this new company. And
Yeah.
I'd love for you to consider being a client of mine. And George and his Irish, just on the phone, we didn't have any of the video or anything, and it's kind of quiet. And he says, "Well, why don't you come down to Virginia and we'll talk about it?" And okay, so I go down to Virginia. I show up, and there's 4 people in the room:
Yep.
him and Jim Schaefer, his co-founder, Dennis Ainge, who you might remember,
Yeah, of
and
course.
another guy who you probably don't know, Tom Holland. And I'm like, wow, I got 4 people. I don't think this company is very big. And it turns out there were like 7 people at the time, or 6 people. And I had 4 of them in the room. And they're like grilling me for like 3 or 4 hours. And I'm like, this is a really hard sales call. And so at the end, everybody leaves except George. And he leans over and he says, "So Russ, um, would you rather start a company and we be your first client, or would you rather come and join us at TargusInfo?" And I'm like, "Oh, this was an interview. I get it now." So, so I'm like, I have a burning desire to start a company. And the long story short, he convinced me that it would be better for me to come there, help them build Targus, help build a financial war chest, and learn how to build a company under his tutelage. And 13 years later, it was he kept me there for 13 years, and kept kind of extending it. And so that was 1998. I joined, and it wasn't until 2004 we learned about performance marketing, this thing called leads, and like, what is this thing? And it was Paul McClenahan, if you remember him,
Yeah,
who
of course.
came back from a sales call with Service Magic in Golden,
Yeah.
Colorado. And he's like, they have a lead quality problem, and maybe we could help. And I was like, yeah, maybe we can. And that began with Targus and data. And then I started LeadID in 2011, but that's how I got into it to begin with.
Wow. Okay, cool. So now that all makes, yeah, Sean and I got in double positive in 2004, and you guys were one of our first companies that we connected with. We were
Yeah,
close to you geographically, but we ran into each other, I think, at one of the events. But going back to George, rest in peace, George. We miss you, man. What was it like working for him, and you know his influence over you and your success?
yeah. His influence was profound. I'll start with that. Profound, transformative. I often called him my business father. My father's my biological father's still alive and
Yeah,
well, and we have a good relationship. But he wasn't a businessman and he wasn't
yeah,
a technology guy, and he still isn't. And so I often called George my business father. Like I
yeah,
learned so much from him. Um, there's so many fun stories, and I started working there. I'm 27 years old, and I think I'm like the hottest shit out there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a great sales guy, and but George was, I guess, mature enough to not knock me down, but kind of bring me along at the same time and let me realize how much I still had to learn. So I learned from watching, I learned from being with him on sales calls, and I learned directly. And it
yeah,
started going beyond that. Like you get really close to the people you're close with at work and your mentors, and he was a mentor. And I learned a lot about life. I learned a lot about so many topics that have affected me profoundly. Um, Day to day, I often joke because it's like, you know, maybe with like other family members, there's like love hate. It's like,
right.
the
Yeah.
guy would drive me freaking crazy. Am I allowed to curse on this? Do you frown upon cursing, or is it in
No,
this?
go for it. Bring it
Okay,
on.
he would drive me fucking crazy at times,
Yeah,
and so like we all do. And so we had our power struggles. I think part of that, especially in the later years, was, I went to him at 27. I said I wanted to start a company. He convinced me to come join him, which I think was a really good choice.
yeah,
But he kept convincing me, and there was still this burning desire, like, I want to go do it. I don't want to deal with your bullshit anymore, old man. And like, meanwhile, now I'm like, man, I know what he was going through, and I work with younger people who I
yeah,
love dearly,
yeah,
and I'm like, just grow up a little faster, like,
yeah,
you got to learn some of this stuff, and so I have so much sort of empathy for him, um, but it was mostly love. There was some tough challenges, and really the reason I left was we were gonna sell,
right.
and we all knew it, and I didn't want to be with the new company. It was like time for me to go, and he blessed me to go, and it was like shook hands, and the Godfather said, go off and do your thing. And um, the sad story for those that don't know is like a year and a half later, maybe 2.5 years later, I think it was in June of 2013, he suddenly died, and
Yeah,
it was just like, it was, I think about him very often. What I wouldn't give to um share a glass of scotch that he pours, because
yeah.
he knew a lot about scotch
Oh,
and
yeah,
about scotch, and just sit with him and be like, George, like, A, I understand so much more, and B, let's have our next conversation, man. But can't do that.
yeah, man. No, thank you for sharing that. I We'll move on to lead ID and Jornaya in a second, but like my memory, because we had the Targus conference in New Orleans. I feel like I
Yeah,
was a big influence in that. I
you
begged
were.
you and some other key players. It was like, let's get out of Vegas for once, man. And you guys gracefully put it in between Jazz Fest, the week right in between, which is
Yeah,
amazing. And I remember George and Matt Tillman singing
yeah,
together at the Fat Cats right there on Bourbon Street.
yep.
Tillman had that, thing around him. It was so awesome, and it was just we all got to hang out and just have some good times together. Sadly, I also remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I showed up. I think it was the next morning or the morning after that. You were the MC, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
showed up to the session wearing the same clothes that I had on the previous day. So I wore the part of asking to be in New Orleans by you having by being up there. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember very distinctly. And first of all, the New Orleans conference, I don't know if like you remember it this way, but I remember distinctly. We had our OLQS, the Online Lead Quality Summit, and that
Yeah,
was in Vegas. And this was a separate conference, and it was like off schedule. So this was like in March or May or something. And but we kept the OLQS, and this was like a new conference that we were adding into it to go over scoring and stuff. I don't know, whatever
that's right.
excuse.
That's
And it was
right. That's
in
right.
New Orleans. But I remember you walking in, and I think I was on the podium, and I had already started. And you walk in, and I might have even commented, like, Joey, did you change since yesterday
You
afternoon?
did. I was like, oh
And
man.
like, I didn't have
Oh.
time. And you had that hoarse voice, and yeah, it was a
Yes.
lot of fun.
Shop
George,
voice.
could have a
Now
lot
I'm
of
in
fun.
bed before midnight, dude.
Yeah, I know.
I
It's
don't,
like,
I subscribe to nothing happens good after midnight.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I do remember those days, man. It was such a good time. Well, and now you talked about how why you left, Targus, which made sense. You knew that there was a sale coming and imminent, and you kind of were blessed by the Godfather. Um, what made you want to start Lead ID, now known as Jornaya? But what made you want to start Lead ID?
Yep. And I'm just like, I'm looking like the half light, half dark guy
There
here,
you
but
go.
there you go. That's better. So yeah, so I always say, and I used to talk about this at our company, that I really wanted to start a company. That was first and foremost. That was at 27 years old. That was at 40 years old when I started Lead ID. Um, and then as far as what company I was going to start was actually less important. And there were multiple things that I got involved with that I saw problems that hadn't been solved or certain things that I think I could have an impact on and bring some value to. Lead ID was one of them. Lead ID, to give props to Atul Patel, it was his idea. And he had posted, Mike Ferrie had written a blog post
Yeah,
about lead identity back in
yeah,
2008. And Atul and I and Dave Helmreich used to talk about it all the time. Like, oh, theoretically, like you could have an identity for every lead that travels through the ecosystem. And Atul was like, yeah, you could have a GUID. And I'm like, what's a GUID? And I didn't know what a GUID was. It's a global unique identifier. That's what a lead
yeah,
ID is now. But so that was one of the ones that popped. And it was actually Helmrich who I was sort of talking with about different ideas. He knew I was leaving, like everybody else did at that point, in like
yeah.
October of 2010. And I remember a whiteboard session when Helmrich and I were kind of jamming on. So like LeadID could do all these great things that Tools talked about and we've talked about. But if you accomplish those things, what else might be possible? And it was like my TargusInfo data brain was like, holy shit. Um, it'll be really hard to just get Lead ID going. But if we do, it'll be great in and of itself. But there's so much more that we could then do being in that position to help the industry in broader ways. So I was sold on not only the near term problems that we could go solve, but some of the long term value and that we could bring to the industry as well. So that's ultimately what put me over the top.
Right on, man. Like so, I remember. Now I remember a lot of that. GUID. Can you imagine the company name GUID?
Yeah. Well, it's funny
uh,
how I got the domain too, though. By the way, it was like in March of 2011. I was running around California talking to people about
yeah.
lead identity, and then I was just looking up domain names, and it was like leadid.com is available for
Boom.
$225. I'm like, $225. I think I might buy that. And somebody in Libya owned it, I think,
Wow.
or Lebanon. I can't remember which one. Sorry, I don't mean to be offensive about
It's not, no,
confusing
no,
names,
yeah.
but GoDaddy like brokered the deal, and I'm like, but is this trustworthy? Like, if I send my
Yeah.
225, am I getting the domain? And they're like, yeah. And I got leadid.com, and it was lead ID.
That's That's awesome, man. What were some of the early? I know some of the key players that you built the company with. They're good friends of mine as well. What were some of the early stages of where you were focusing, or some of the challenges that you guys had?
Yeah, so gosh, it was way more challenging than I thought or kind of gave credence to. I think partially on purpose, because if I realized how hard it was,
Yeah,
I might not have done it. I might have chosen something a little easier. But the biggest challenge was I talked to a lot of people before I started the company, like people, friends of ours in the industry. Um, I won't name them by name, but they were
Yeah.
really helpful. Tillman is one that I talked to who I can mention because he was helpful in the sense that he liked the idea. He helped me sort of think about how it might work and stuff like that. That was in November of 2010. We were at a show in New York City at the DMA at the
Right.
Jacob Javits Center, and
Yeah.
we went to lunch and we're doing literally stuff on the back of a napkin. But other people, all of whom were like, "Yeah, great idea." And I didn't think to ask them, yeah, but would you do it on your
Right.
publisher sites or do you have the authority to make that happen? I didn't ask
Right.
that question. Like I learned later, you got to ask some of those sales questions. But all of my friends in the industry are like, yeah, great. And then I went and started a company and I went back to them and I'm like, yeah, so we're going to put our code on your site. They're like, you're going to do what? Like, yeah.
Exactly.
And even friends of ours and Tillman
Yeah.
was very helpful. He walked me, but it wasn't his call. So
Right.
he walked me into the rooms and places I had to be. And they were a pretty early adopter. Guys like Eric Josowitz was incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
AWL was an early adopter. But I had others who were literally friends of mine who were like, yeah, no, I don't think we want to do that. And I'm like, well, why not? It's
Right.
like, well, you're a startup. And I'm like, I'm not a startup. LeadID is a startup, but like, you know me, dude. Like, what are you doing? And that was like the hardest part was convincing publishers or websites to put our code on their site when there wasn't really a short-term tangible benefit for them to do so, and there was risk. Um,
Right.
so we had to kind of figure out how to get a groundswell of companies putting our code on their website, and that was the biggest initial hurdle.
Right on, man. Yeah, and I remember that. And ultimately, I think the buyers, when you started getting like deeper traction, telling the story in the mortgage space and some other verticals, that really helped get because once buyers say, "Hey, we need you to implement this," it's going to carry a lot of weight, as far as
It
um,
definitely did. It's funny though that like I have a whiteboard that I have a picture of it that shows, all right, here's how this is going to go. And it's either not going to go at all or it's going to go like this. Buyers are going to continue to put pressure on sellers. But the other dynamic I found that was really interesting and actually a little bit heartwarming in a way, buyers didn't want to be jerks to their vendors. Most buyers,
yeah,
their buyers weren't willing to be like, hey, do it or else. And part of that was LeadID is new. So like, I don't know that I want to bet my vendor relationship on this company called LeadID. Um, but so it wasn't as clean as just get the buyers and everything's going to go well. It's sort of like um, there was an education company, DeVry, that was our very first client. But part of the customer relationship was we need your help to
right.
kind of share with the industry the importance of doing this. But it took us like a year and we had to get other schools like Kaplan and Corinthian at the time, Corinthian was very aggressively helping us to do this, but most of them didn't want to break too much glass. So
Yeah.
there still was a lot of nuance involved, and that's where like some of the early people at LeadID, like Rob and Lauren, were incredibly helpful at continuing to keep the pressure up, but not breaking everyone's house while doing it. So
Oh yeah, shout out Rob and Lauren. Love to you. You guys, amazing team. You got to work with some amazing people at Targus and Jornaya. Do you miss? First of all, we all know anybody that's been through an acquisition. It's climbing a mountain and some. So congratulations to
thank
you
you.
and everybody
Thank
for
you.
getting transaction done. It's do you miss being in the grind with them? As you guys say, the Jornayans. Do you miss being with them every day?
I do sometimes,
Yeah.
I was gonna make a joke and be like, I don't miss you guys at all, but I do, and I've gotten together with different groups of people at times, but it's not this, it's different in some ways in a better way. Like we're not in the grind, and we can have a lot of new kinds of connection and fun in that way. But the everyday grind, as hard as it can be at times and challenging, it's something very special when you're doing with people that you become so close with, which we did. A lot of us became really close. And even the people you're less close with, but you're seeing them every day, you're working every day, you're trying to solve problems. And there's an element that I miss of that. I don't miss it so much that I think it was like the wrong decision to sell or to leave. I think
Yeah.
both of those ended up being the right decision. But sometimes, I miss high school some days, and I miss college
Yeah.
some days, and I miss, it's like I had a lot of great times, and I definitely miss some times at Jornaya for sure.
Yeah, you guys built special companies and still doing great. I know it's hard probably for you. It's like you said at times, but I know you're one of the biggest cheerleaders. So,
I mean, I'm
uh,
so happy for them, and it, was part of my calculus also was 4 years prior to selling, I had some goals to sell, and for a certain amount, but not in that timeline. I just said whenever
right.
it happens. But one of my goals, and I wrote them down. I wrote down like 7 life goals, and 2 of them, one was selling the company and creating a lot of wealth for everybody involved, because like all employees had equity. Our investors all made a lot of money. Like everybody made money, and that was a goal.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and secondly, I wrote down I want to create the most value I can for all involved in the transition to Newco. Newco being whoever acquires us. I don't know who that's going to be. And one of the things I really wanted to make sure of was that the people who wanted to stay and have the opportunities that they now have at Verisk had those opportunities. And you've got the Eli's and Robs and Matts and Todds and then so many other people that I know that are thriving, and
Yeah,
it's totally awesome. I'm their biggest
that's
cheerleader, so
awesome, man.
I miss being with them every day. I don't miss, in fact, me getting out of the way, not to be humble, it's just to be true, is like it allowed more growth from some of those people as well. They had to step into some new roles, and it's great for everybody. And for me, it's like, yeah, I could have kept doing it. I was at the peak of my game maybe, but I have other things I want to do. I don't fully know what all those are yet, but I'm exploring. But it was right. It was just
Yeah,
it was hard in a way, but it was right. Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Speaking of cheerleader, by the way, I think you know this. My wife's from Philadelphia, and
Yep.
I'm a diehard Baltimore fan, but I've kind of adopted them as my second team naturally. The Phillies had an amazing run,
It was so great. Oh
almost
my
there,
god.
yeah,
Yeah. They just
yeah,
signed Trey
almost
Turner.
there.
I just saw this
I saw
afternoon.
that 11
Yeah.
year deal.
Yeah.
Uh, but man, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, the team just looks amazing. Do you think they're going to
Yeah.
go all the way?
It's tough, man. We've got this Eagles curse mentality that we've been so scarred. 2017 was the first time we were like, yeah, we can't believe it. And it actually happened. But Carson Wentz went down, and we're like, yep, there you go. We're dead, and we weren't. But um, they're really good. I'm not sure. The Cowboys are looking really good, and
They look good.
um, but let me tell you one thing: the Super
49ers,
Bowl is
yeah.
in your neck of the woods this year. Um,
Yes.
so if the Eagles go, I may need a place to stay. All right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Garage,
Me and like
1,000 a night in the garage. Is that fair? Does that sound?
I like it. I only need like 12 beds. I'm gonna bring like a whole crew of people. But no, but I
Fly
think
Eagles fly, man. No,
maybe Baltimore or Philly,
that would
if we're
be
lucky.
amazing. My Lamar went down last night, so I don't know, but we'll see. Hopefully, we can. The Chiefs look pretty good. The Bengals got to give props to them too, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
um, it's fun, man. December football is so much fun.
It's so
So
fun. Yeah.
it's so much
Getting
fun. I know
involved.
you'll get to enjoy it, especially not having to work as much as full time. You get to really engage
Yeah.
in it.
I was at the game
Dude,
yesterday with my 2 boys. So it
yeah,
was
oh,
great.
cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I had Jalen on my fantasy team, so he put up a big 40 for me.
Let's go.
What are you looking for more as we wrap up? Are you looking for more like you kicked off the call just saying you're looking for more potential opportunities right now? Are you kind of to talk to, or are you kind of just you know, in bed, or if you may, with the 4 or 5
Yeah, no,
companies you're working with now?
here's how I put it. I've gotten somewhat busy, but I never say no to conversations, either meet people or people I know who want to chat about their business. There's like no strings attached. It's very informal. I love
Good.
learning about businesses. I'm going deeper into some larger investment opportunities and things. So like what I'm finding about this game is kind of more connection is good, more conversation is good, and I'm always up for a good conversation like we have today. So
Awesome.
yeah, so anyone who's watching this comes across who's like, hey, love to chat with Ross for 30 minutes if that's possible. I'm open to doing that.
Dude, that's awesome. You said you're I mean, everybody that knows you knows you're such a great guy, and
Thank you.
it's
Thank you.
amazing. Like I said, that you got the transaction done. You got to spend some time with the family, living the dream, man. And it's great. Like, it's
Yeah.
I wanted to touch base with you because I haven't seen you in a while, and I miss you, man. But I'm glad that you got to come out and we got to chat about your past, and then also obviously where it ties to the success of the business of LeadID and Jornaya, and now you just live it up, man, but do it in the way that makes you happy,
Yeah.
and
This
I'm
is
happy
like
for you.
a lot of these things make me happy. It's, some people are like, why aren't you just going away somewhere forever? And I'm like, it's not really my life. I mean, maybe in 30 years or so, I don't know. So, appreciate it, man. It's great connecting. I'm so
Awesome.
glad you
Thank
reached
you so
out,
much,
and
brother.
we should do it more
Yeah.
often. And, we'll look forward to next time, whether on camera or not. So,
Yes. Thank you, Ross.